Have you ever thought about the idea of how the food you ate or the environment you grew up in impacts you today? Well, welcome to part two of our conversation with Tim Mak. In today's episode, we're going to peel back some more layers on what nutraceuticals are and what Trilliome is currently doing with them. And we're also going to discuss this topic of the relationship between culture and microbes. So let's get started. So if I were to give Trillium, I don't know, $2 billion today, where would that money be invested?
I would say because Trilliome pride ourselves as we wanted to develop ingredients that actually works. So the money will go for more of these R&D efforts and also sourcing out novel or new extract from different plants from the world.
And what kind of research would you be looking to focus on first?
So we will focus more on the gut health first because we believe that the microbiome actually play the most important role, especially in the gut health area. Because as I said earlier on, we are what we eat.
So do you have a product that's out currently?
No, we are developing the product at the moment. As I said, I think right now we are fundraising to perform a human clinical safety study next year. And hopefully, maybe in 1 or 2 years' time, you will see our products out there.
How long have we been doing nutraceutical research?
So I think nutraceutical is always a bit of a subjective term. I think if you talk about nutrition supplements business, that have been for years or for a long time right now. And to develop a product, that depends, right? Let's say if there's a scientifically proven products, like all these natural ingredients, like maybe I give you an example, like turmeric, for example. People are buying it pill out there right now. And how much data do they have? We don't know. I mean, there are some substantial evidence here and there, and turmeric has been consumed centuries and this has been known for health benefits. And to make a product that actually works very well, we need to get the extracts, or maybe you have to do further studies on that particular extracts to make sure that we concentrate these extracts, to make sure that we have substantial scientific evidence before we actually put it into human studies, and then ultimately we put it into to the consumer's direction. So that's kind of the profit. So the years can be varies from one product to another, right? So I think, for example, let's say if you talk about probiotics, bacteria, for example, I think there's much more work in terms of production because you have to grow the live bacteria, and there's a lot of issues sometimes to grow the live bacteria because of contamination. So that also takes some time. And let's say if you are dealing with anaerobic bacteria, which that means they cannot survive oxygen, for example, and that will take a longer time to develop that.
Speaking of supplements, a lot of people take this multivitamin, like one multivitamin, and that has zinc, iron, magnesium, all these different things. How do you think taking a multivitamin impacts the gut microbiome?
So vitamins have been shown to have an impact on the microbiome. That's kind of, there are a lot of scientific papers out there. Of course, vitamins are also important. Let's say if you don't eat enough fruit, or you don't have enough intake from your daily food, for example, then it's a good idea to take the vitamins. But if you have a good diet, a diet with fruits and vegetables, a healthy diet, for example, then you don't need the vitamins, right, in that sense. And that's why in the end, the vitamins, it can also improve the microbiome. It can also replace the vitamins that is not taken. So you need those vitamins. So it's kind of it also depends on the individual. If someone feels that they feel better after taking the vitamins, yeah, go for it then.
Taking the multivitamins, it's like if you take it, it's great for you. If you don't, you should be fine if you're having a balanced diet.
Correct.
What about AI? How is AI impacting your field right now?
Right now, what is actually going on is what we so-call the personalized microbiome / nutrition area. that using a lot of, and the reason why doing this is because there's a lot of companies out there, like they provide this kind of microbiome testing kits. You can send your stool samples in, and they can do a sequencing. That means they can check all this DNA of the bacteria or the microbes in your gut. And they scan it out, they sequence it, and then they compile the data, and they can provide you a recommendation whether what kind of food or supplement you take to improve your gut microbiome. And that use a lot of AI and machine learning, right? Because you have a lot of big data set on the sequencing side, and they also advise you on all these kind of things. But at the moment, I think it's still quite difficult because in the end, a lot of these companies exist. It's actually also quite high cost of it. And ultimately, I think in the end, they also will provide you, okay, you should, the advice, well, the take-home message is to always have a balanced diet, for example. That's kind of a take-home message.
Yeah.
And of course, some of them, you might have some interesting finding. For example, if you have, I have certain bacteria A and bacteria B missing, and how do you improve that? Then you can try to take some supplements or some food or some fruits or some vegetables to improve the bacteria.
Yeah. Everyone says that we should have a balanced diet, and I would say that yes, but sometimes it's quite difficult, especially when the grocery stores have very limited options when it comes to fruit and vegetables, at least in, I would say, some Western grocery stores. So if you cannot have a balanced diet, if that could be a financial reason too. Would you say that taking a supplement for you balancing your diet?
I think first thing first, it's always important to have a balanced diet no matter what. The supplements will only is a supportive, it's a complementary thing for the diet. If you think the diet is not enough, just for example, if you're not eating meat or you're a vegetarian, then probably it's a good idea to take iron supplements, right? Just for example, and let's say if you don't think you have enough vitamin C, for example, then you can take vitamin C. That's fine. I mean, you can take that. But I think what's important is to really make sure to have a balanced diet, and the supplements will comes in as a support.
Okay. So we have to have a balanced diet. Let's go to the grocery store right now. What am I going to put in my grocery cart for the week?
I think it's always about this 5 per day, if I remember correctly. So 5 fruits or 5 vegetables per day. If you make sure that you eat, that will be okay. But of course, that depends on individuals. Some people don't like it. Some people is okay about it. And I would say just fruits and vegetables. If you're a vegetarian, then if you're a meat eater, then just try to go for white meat instead. Fish, for example.
Okay.
Some apples as well. Some greens. I come from Asia, so I like to have more Asian vegetables like pak choy, for example, to cook. I'm not a big fan of salad, but I eat salad anyway because of the fibers and vegetables. Some salad. Fish is possible, as fresh as possible, but that depends also on the region where you are. Some chicken, for example, if you're not vegetarian. If you're vegetarian, then take more tofu, more seed-based, and more kind of a beans, that kind of direction. Yeah, I'm very specific on that right now.
So are you vegetarian?
Flexitarian.
Flexitarian.
Because I was vegetarian before, and I developed and I was anemic, so I tried to take some iron supplements, and I start eating some chicken. That should be, yeah, that's fine for now.
Yeah. Once again, balance. Have you seen the documentary The Blue Zone on Netflix?
I heard about it, and no, not yet. It's on my list to watch, and I'm very much interested in the Blue Zone area.
So I have spoken about this so many times now, but in the Blue Zone, the majority of the people there, they do eat meat, but they eat a lot more vegetables during the week, it seems. Yeah. And it also, when you think about it from an evolutionary stance, it would have been a lot more difficult for us to get meat back then than it is now. Meat is way more readily available. And for some reason, it's easier to get a bunch of meat for the family than it is to buy a lot of vegetables because they expand more.
True.
Yeah.
agree, but I think it's,
Yeah.
as I say, also depends on where you come from. No, I come from Southeast Asia, and we have a lot of greens, vegetables everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think meat was always a bit of a luxury thing for us too, in that sense. So there's definitely, of course, vegetables and fruits are affordable in comparison to also meat. So back where I'm from, so I think that's how it is, and we definitely have more variety of greens, fruits, vegetables compared to meat. Of course, we also have some meat here and there, but that's kind of a luxury thing. Once in a while, we have that. I think when we talk about the blue zone was also quite interesting because in Okinawa, also one of the blue zone in Japan, I think what they have is also that you don't really eat until that you are really full. You are kind of eating maybe 80% full. You don't eat full.
Hmm.
When you feel like 80% full, you stop eating. And that's also one of the way how they promote it as a healthy eat. Because in the end, of course, our human body will need a lot of energy to actually digest those food. If you eat super full, then you lose a lot of energy to digesting all those food. So maybe that's also one way of living healthier, longer.
Yeah, I never even thought about it like that. That's very true. But another thing is that takes a lot of self-control. So it takes a lot of self-control when you see all of this great food and you're like, I really want to have this and that, but maybe that wouldn't be great for me. And energy sources, we're eating a lot more calories right now, I would say, without expending them, which is the main reason why we're gaining a bunch of weight because we're not burning it off at the same rate. Back to you saying you grew up in Southeast Asia. So your diet would have been a lot different than a Western diet. How has your microbiome or your gut health possibly changed from moving from East Asia to more of a Western country?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know, but I didn't check my
Mm-hmm.
microbiome. But there's also some studies showing that people coming from Asia and when they move to Western countries, their microbiome also change because of the environment, also because of the diet. For example, I think we probably eat more bread and more pasta and more that kind of pizza, for example, and that kind of changed the whole microbiome per se. And it's much more similar to the Western people who are eating Western food, for example, here. That could be it, right? But as I said, I don't know. Hopefully not, because I'm still kind of eating mix. It's a balanced diet, right? A mix of Western Asian food at the same time. So I have to go through these testing kits to find out, to figure out if my microbiome actually changed. But I cannot do it anymore because I don't live in Asia anymore.
Yeah, you'd have to test your microbiome before you left and then test it now. I'd be interesting to know how long it actually takes for the microbiome to shift.
Yeah, that's a good point. It actually doesn't shift that quickly unless if you have some sort of infection or antibiotics. I think, for example, if someone coming from the Western countries, when they go to Asia, for example, the water is different, the food is different, they have this traveler diarrhea, of course, the microbiome change completely. But if you are
Mm-hmm.
healthy, I think it doesn't change just drastically just one day like this, but probably it will take several days to see some changes. But the changes is always there's always changes depending on how you look into it. If you go very deep into a specific species of the microorganism, then of course there will be some changes. But if you go more on the genus level or family level, then probably it's more or less the same.
You spoke a little bit just now about antibiotics and how that can actually cause a shift in your microbiome. Does that mean when you're sick that you almost have a reset button in a way?
Yeah, there's a lot of studies out there as well. I think it shows that antibiotics does have the impact on the microbiome, and
Mm-hmm.
it also destroy or actually disrupt the core microbiome itself. So that's why the doctors always advise us to take some probiotics when you take antibiotics and yeah, that would be a very drastic change with antibiotics because it's the external factors that actually kill a lot of micro bacteria in there. So does that definitely change the whole thing? But that depending also on the spectrum of the antibiotics. Some is stronger, some is weaker. So that it really depends on the whole antibiotics.
What do you think is one of the biggest myths that we've heard about our gut health? right now.
Yeah. I think I wanted to clarify one thing. I think when we talk about microbiome, I also know from my side, we keep on talking about bacteria. The myth itself is the
Mhm.
microbiome is actually just not bacteria. We have other stuff too, like phages, which is the viruses for bacteria. You also have the fungus, for example, and that's part of the
Mhm.
microbiome. So in the end, it's not really bacteria in the microbiome, but there are also other microorganisms in the microbiome itself. I think that's one of the big myths that when we talk about microbiome, people think about bacteria, which is not true.
Our bodies are so smart and so complex that when you get down to a lot of different diseases, it gets more complicated. And you realize that there's a lot of integration happening, collaborating between other systems. What group of science do you think should collaborate with microbiome science?
Most likely, any kind of human related science. Well, I mean, I'm talking about human microbiome for now. And
Mm-hmm.
all this cancer research, brain health, skin health, they all related to it. They have this gut brain axis, gut skin axis, cancer microbiome, for example. They all play a role of it. So of course, it's kind of there's an interaction between both. There's interplay between. It's kind of all together at the end. So because we are all complex creature, and then definitely there'll be a lot of factors going around this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every disease, honestly, it's very complex, and I think a lot of people that are not in the science field don't understand why is it that we don't have all the cures for these diseases. And personally, I just think that we need to do a lot more integrating of different sciences together. And science is about
Yeah.
collaborating. Like there's no scientific discovery that has ever been done by just one individual. Uh, no matter who's winning the Nobel Prize, there was someone else that was also there helping them because that's we collaborate. And from a global scale, I'm hoping that we'll be moving more to a more integrative field where it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to be a biochemist and I'm going to be working on RNA biology, but understanding maybe how RNA biology and nutraceuticals can also collaborate on a project together. And maybe that would help us understand some of these diseases a little bit better.
But I believe there are some of these efforts going on, right? This kind of collaboration going on between different area of science, also in the academic level.
Yeah.
And the industry level, of course, they're probably much less, but I believe there are also some people are working in this area of collaboration work.
Mm-hmm. One of the last questions that I ask is who is your science genie?
Okay. The Science Genie, what does the genie means here?
So, a science genie can be anybody because, as I was just saying, science is all encompassing. So, it doesn't have to be in like a stereotypical science field. It doesn't have to be microbiome. It could be your mom if you wanted it to be. It just who inspires you right now to continue to do this research?
Point. I think it's also go back to my personal story before. Probably I won't call it the dengue virus is my science genie, but the experience of me getting dengue fever back home, that was kind of the motivation or my inspiration to actually become a scientist.
Mhm.
And yeah, in the end, I think I'm also very fascinated with with the whole world of microbiome because I started as a microbiologist, so I work on single bacteria, and then I work on multiple bacteria, and then I started working on the microbiome. So that's how the evolution of.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Science Genies today and talking to us about nutraceuticals. And I hope that we continue to connect.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alicia. I enjoyed the conversation too.
Well, did this episode spark any questions for you? In today's episode, we learned a little bit more about how nutraceuticals are going to be going from research to real life. We also delved into the topic of how culture influences our microbiome and how we choose different foods to this day. Even after moving across the world to a new region, your microbiome and the culture you grew up in, it still influences the way that you eat today. That just makes me think a little bit more about how moving impacts your microbes and how staying stagnant in one place for the rest of your life impacts your microbes. Because we have discussed how diversity is great for the microbiome. Food for thought. I'll look into that some more. But if you listened to this episode and you've listened to the last few episodes, one of the biggest things that you can take away so far is balance is the key to the optimal diet and health. You learn that in each episode so far. One of my favorite Swedish sayings is lagom, which means balance in an essence. So just remember to stay balanced. And of course, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, especially comment if you had any questions about this episode, or just let me know what you're curious about. Until next time.